Get ready with me while we read the Bible. Specifically, we are reading from the book of John 6 and Luke 9, the feeding of the 5,000. Starting with Luke 6, verse 1, it says, "After this, Jesus crossed the Sea of Galilee, or Tiberias. A huge crowd was following him because they saw the signs that he was performing by healing the sick. Jesus went up a mountain and sat there with his disciples. Now the Passover, a Jewish festival, was near, so when Jesus looked up and noticed a huge crowd coming toward him, he asked Philip, 'Where will we buy bread so that these people can eat?' He asked this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread won't be enough for each of them to have little." One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they for so many?" Last night, God had me read John 6 because there are some pretty impossible things that I'm believing God for. Some things that are basically way out of my ability, my own strength, and my own capacity. I thought that it was so interesting that in verse 5 and 6, Jesus asked Philip, "Where are we going to get money to feed these people?" But it also states that Jesus already knew what he was going to do, even though he was testing Philip. But Jesus already had an answer. Jesus already had the game plan. He wasn't worried about what was going to happen. He already knew what he was going to do. But he was testing his servant's faith. I believe there's 2 types of faith. There's active faith and there is non-active faith. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Active faith is when you are moving in faith and you are doing action to receive what it is that you are asking God for. Then there's non-active faith where God just has you receive. He just has you receive by believing. The appropriate action here would be like prayer and faith itself. I'm the type of person who operates on both depending on the situation and the circumstance and just my season. I believe there are moments where God has us have active faith and there are moments where he has us have non-active faith. But non-active faith means that you're still believing. I'll give you an example. In verse 10, Jesus says, "Have the people sit down." Corinthians 6:13 reads, "Be on alert, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong." But just stay with me here, we're going somewhere, I promise. Continuing that verse, it says, "There was plenty of grass in that place, so they sat down. The men numbered about 5,000. Verse 11, "Then Jesus took the loaves, and after giving thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated." Back to 1 Corinthians 16:13, "Be on alert, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong." Now, I don't know about you, but I know that there is a clear distinction between sitting and standing, right? Sitting, I would say, is recessive, while standing is not. There are seasons in our lives where God asks us to either receive by faith or to stand on faith. 2 different things. Ephesians 2:8 reads, "For by grace you have been saved, nothing you did could ever earn this salvation, for it was the love gift from God that brought us to Christ, so no one will ever be able to boast, for salvation is never a reward for good works or human striving." But then we have verses like James 2 that says, "But someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith without works and I will show you faith with works." Then we have James 2:17 through 26, "Even so faith, if not have works, is dead." Obviously, I believe that this is in a different context, that, you have to start working out your faith when you receive salvation at some point by repenting and doing the necessary work needed to live out your Christian life. But this is why I mentioned that knowing your season is so important, because there are times where God himself wants to do the thing for you by grace, and there are times where you are to do the thing by works. This is why we had the conversation about standing and sitting. Standing is non-recessive, while sitting is. I definitely believe that there's a time for you to stand in faith and there's a time for you to sit in faith. I believe that we serve such a good God that at times when we can't stand in faith, he'll allow us to sit. But our sitting still requires faith, and sometimes for you to stay in faith, you still have to pray. You still have to declare the word of God over what it is that you're believing God for. But it's imperative to know your season, whether you are standing in faith or where you are receiving by faith. Because if we look at the Bible, Jesus freely gave to his people. He freely gave healing to those who needed healing. He freely rose people up from the dead who were meant to be raised up from the dead. It didn't require anything from them. It just required for them to believe. Bye.